We are officially at the halfway point of hurricane season. So far, so good, and with Hurricane Idalia in the rear view, what can we expect to see in the next few months? Joining us today from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is Warning Coordination Meteorologist Ron Morales. Ron, thank you for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me.
So, this season, compared to other seasons, what are we seeing from a professional standpoint?
Well, we've been in a long period of what we call kind of higher activity than normal. It actually started back in 1995, much of my career. And we're right about normal right now. We've had 13 named storms.
Okay.
Normal is 14, but we've still got a solid 6 to 8 weeks left of the season. So, you know, I think we've got more to go through.
And now, compared to, you know, last year or seasons in the past, are we right about even keel?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really watch those type of trends too much because they are variable. And one thing that can lull you into kind of thinking it's not a big deal as you go through June, July, and not much happens, and then all of a sudden August comes and things explode. And that's pretty much what happened this year.
Yeah.
We really didn't have a lot going on early in the season, and then things just kind of exploded. Climatologically, or sort of as the data goes year by year, we are right in the peak of hurricane activity right now as far as when they typically develop and the number that we have out there. It's actually right around September 10th. You know, so we're right in there, and you think, oh, we're late in the season, kids are back in school, fall's around the corner, but hurricane season's just really right smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, so hurricanes around this time, do they seem to be more intense between, you know, early season or later in the season?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. As you get later in the season, the water has warmed up over several months, and generally the storms are going to be stronger. The ones I particularly worry about are the ones that we call the Cape Verde storms that come off of Africa. They come all the way across the tropical Atlantic, and then it's a question of whether they curve up the East Coast or go into the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean Sea. And those are the ones I really worry about for a couple of reasons. They tend to be stronger, and they also are going to potentially hit us from the water toward the land, pushing a lot of water or storm surge, being really strong in the wind and all that kind of stuff. So those are the ones I really worry about.
Now, I wanted to ask you, Hurricane Hillary in California, they haven't had a tropical storm since 1939, I believe, the Long Beach tropical storm. Was that, you know, really odd to have that in California?
Well, you know, I look at the Earth differently and the atmosphere differently than most people, and I look at things and I think, why not? Why can't that happen? Well, one of the reasons why they typically don't get tropical systems is the water, the current flows from north to south on that part of the coast of the world. It comes from Alaska down the coast. It's very cold. If you've ever been to California, try to go into the beaches, those waters are not warm. Well, hurricanes don't like cold water. So that water's coming down, and it's essentially going to act to kill any sort of tropical system. So if you notice even that Hillary storm or others that come up, they're all strong right off of the coast of Mexico, not too far to the south or even the Baja of California. But as they come up, they tend to weaken pretty fast as far as their wind speeds go. But if you remember with this storm, it had a lot of moisture. And it doesn't take much to flood the southwest U.S. Like very little. I mean, you would, here in Charleston or anywhere other parts of the South, you might get 2, 3, 4 inches of rain and not have a big deal. Down there, it's catastrophic because of the desert region.
Now, is that concerning, or is that just a, you know, normality? It happens sometimes.
I don't know. Again, you want to look at data and you want to look at trends. If that, you know, if that starts to happen every year, then that could mean there's something going on with those water currents, and that maybe the water is not as cold as it used to be, which is certainly possible, but I am not an expert in that. I have not looked into that.
Okay, and now do you have any predictions for what we can expect to see in the low country for the next few months of hurricane season?
Well, the official prediction from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, we're a national weather service under NOAA. So the prediction came out, they do a couple of them, and they did an August 10th update, and they're going for 14 to 21 named storms. So that's tropical storm or stronger. We've already had 13, as I said, so we're right about at the bottom edge of that. 14 is normal. And I think we're going to go, you know, well into, I think we're going to approach the 20 mark. That doesn't mean we're going to get hit by them, but somewhere in our whole Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf of Mexico basin, that's the one we worry about, I would not be surprised if we easily make 20 named storms. And usually a couple, 2 to 3 of those become major, meaning category 3 or higher.
Okay.
And we've already had a couple, so.
Yeah. Now, do you have any advice for people living, in a place like Charleston, hurricane-prone areas?
Yeah. I mean, don't get lulled into thinking the season's over. I know that I did. I can speak personally. Last year, I was pretty caught off guard by a late season Ian.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And then the one that we got in early November, I think it was. So we still have, it's only roughly mid-September. I don't start to really personally breathe any sort of sigh of relief until we get well into October, mid to even late October some years.
Okay.
We can still get these storms. They can form as we get later in the season. Storms start to form closer to home. Right now they're forming almost anywhere out deep in the tropical Atlantic, Caribbean, and even the Gulf of Mexico and off our coast. But as we shift into October and even November, they will focus more toward forming closer to us. And that means shorter notice, but usually weaker storms. But I don't want to say too much about that, because even Ian, I've heard a lot of comments that Ian was a small storm, or not Ian, excuse me, Idalia, just a few weeks ago, was small and weak and all that. It caused a lot of problems on the coast. For those that live on the coast know that.
Absolutely. And now, where can our viewers go to keep updated about, potential storms that are brewing?
A couple places. If you don't want to remember the full website for the National Hurricane Center, just hurricanes.gov.
Okay.
Will redirect you to the National Hurricane Center, which is part of us, the National Weather Service. You could go to our local page, which is weather.gov/CHS for Charleston.
Wonderful.
And we've got all the tropical update stuff going on there as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate that. We're back in 2 minutes.